Hi, I'm Stephen and welcome to today's video, where we go through all of the steps involved in converting a BMW to have coilover suspension. We're going to start with some concerns and expectations, move on to unboxing and car preparation, and then on to installation and setup. And finally on to some driving impressions, and a summary of the whole process. They've arrived. That was quick. Let's see what we've got. Not so fast. Before ordering coilover suspension for your car, it definitely pays to think about it a bit first. Coilovers have some great benefits. They are lighter, more compact, and adjustable for ride height at each corner. They are generally firmer than the car's stock suspension, so the car should feel more responsive, more alive. But there are potential downsides as well. If they are too firm, then you might get crashing over bumps and dips in the road, which can feel and sound terrible, and probably not do your back any good if you are, like, older than 20. So I don't want crazy hard springs or super firm shock absorbers, as I have to drive this car on normal roads that aren't always in the best condition. No matter what coilovers you buy, the spring rates are not going to be the same as stock, so there is a pretty high chance that your anti-sway bars are not going to be perfectly matched. So you might want to keep aside some of the suspension budget in order to buy one or two new sway bars, although you won't know for sure until you've done some driving on the new setup. So what I've got here is a MaXpeedingRods coilover kit specifically for the rear-wheel drive E90 and E91. If you've got an M3, a convertible or an X-Drive model, then they all have their own differences going on, so you'll need a different kit. Let's see what's inside. I've absolutely got to mention that one of the most worthwhile upgrades you can do to your BMW's rear end is to replace the stock rubber subframe bushings with something that doesn't flex so much, like polyurethane or even solid alloy. I already have poly subframe bushings on my car, hidden here under the anti-rust spray coating, so I get to skip that job today, fortunately. If you don't feel like taking off your subframe to put on new bushings, then there is a pretty good in-between solution, and that is to get poly inserts. They fill up the air gaps in the subframe bushings, which is enough to stop the large, annoying subframe movements that happen in your E90 as it approaches the limit of rear-end traction. I just can't emphasize enough what a difference upgraded rear subframe bushings can make. On my BMW, it completely eliminated annoying snap oversteer. So putting on coilovers without addressing the subframe bushings is a bit like wearing new running shoes while you still have a broken leg. Okay, maybe not that bad.
Let's see what's inside.
Ooh.
What do you think of this?
I think it's a boy. Here are the front coilovers. Here are the rear springs. And the rear dampers. And here is the adjustment mechanism for the height of the rear springs. Also, we have some matching wrenches for adjusting the ride height and for locking the collars in place. On some cars you will need to get a coilover kit that has camber adjustment on the top plate, but for the BMW E90 series there is already enough camber adjustment available, at least for street use, so these non-adjustable top plates should be fine. Let's compare the new parts with some old E90 suspension parts, just to confirm that everything looks like it will fit in a similar way. So far it looks promising. The next step is to check that every joint and linkage on the car's suspension is in good condition. Since so much has to be removed anyway, now is the perfect time to replace a loose ball joint or a bad tie rod end. To check that everything is nice and tight, I use a homemade tool that I call the Persuader.
The Persuader.
It is a way to put a lot of torque through the wheel hub and show up anything that's moving more than it should be. I made it from old pieces of steel, but you could make a much nicer version by starting with a thick, universal wheel spacer, and then welding some steel pieces on from there. It could look something like this. I am checking all four corners before I start, so that I can order any replacement parts ahead of time, but I'll also be checking again once the springs are removed, because the spring tension can hide some issues, especially on BMW cars. If you are interested in buying the coilover kit that you have seen in this video, then follow the link I put in the video description. The folk at MaXpeedingRods have provided a voucher code that will give you 17% off at checkout if you use the code Steven123. For the coilover installation steps, look out for part 2 of this video series, and I'll pin it here when it's uploaded. Look forward to seeing you then.